My name's Rob Ryder, speaking out of Cornwall. So I'd like to do a little video here, backing up my previous video. So this is my book, Debt Slavery, The Economics of a Banking Mafia, edition 2. So it's, in my opinion, it's quite groundbreaking because lots of people give different aspects of the monetary system, but I bring in politics as a solution. A lot of people are promoting national credit, but there's other aspects to a monetary solution that I put in, which I've gone over on other videos. I did the previous videos about shadow banking. Now, I never wanted to go into what I call the economics of a banking mafia because technically it's just gambling. Shadow banking is just gambling. In fact, there's a lot of gambling. The banking system is a gamble, should we say, but it's controlled by certain people. So the last video I was stating that really a loan of credit is classed as an asset to the bank when it should be a liability. So I want to explain what I'm saying and why under my system it would be a liability. A loan of credit, this is what I'm trying to do in another book, a Debt Slavery 2, where I am actually going to go into the mechanics of banking and economics and the gambling, shadow banking. I didn't want to do it, but I feel it will, shall we say, explain more why the system needs to be dismantled completely. Not just a case of, oh, the Bradbury Pound National Credit is going to solve it all. It's not. And not even just Glass-Steagall. It's not. It's bigger than that. And I didn't feel I needed to go into that. But I feel at the moment, one, it's just fascinating. The system that they've created, it's fascinating. So it's an interest for me. So I don't think it's ever been done. I don't think anyone's ever completely holistically looked at the whole of the banking, economic and political system like I have. I don't think it's been done. And then my second book, I don't think it can be done without the foundation of my first book. There are books on shadow banking, but they're done from a presumed foundation, which is wrong. So I'm trying to do this second book about securitization, shadow banking, the whole mechanics of banking, but in simplified language for everyone. That will fit in with my first book as the foundation. So why do I state that a loan of credit should be a liability to the bank and not an asset? Because when you create a loan, you have real money, shall we say, which is central bank money, which can be digits on screens as bank reserves, or cash. Cash is real money. This is the importance of them wanting to get rid of cash, because it's technically what we would call real money. It's in permanent existence until the central bank themselves take it out of existence. Credit is a temporary extension that should get deleted on repayment. But as I've gone to in other videos, since the invention of securitization in the modern digital system, it doesn't get deleted. So I would end securitization anyway. But my system would make the bank's loan from an asset to a liability. Why? Because when a bank makes a loan, a new deposit, and then use that deposit, say, to buy a house, their own bank reserves have to follow the deposit. There's two layers of money traveling. Your deposit goes into the house seller's house, should we say, if you got a mortgage, goes into his deposit account, £100,000, should we say. But that's, should we say, fake temporary money, credit. So the bank has to send 100,000 of their own reserves, real money, permanent money, to that person's bank. So they lose 100,000 of reserves, because reserves follow deposits. Even if that deposit's been going into a bank or being paid off a debt, it still has to follow. And when the mortgage is being repaid via deposits, and it doesn't matter if it's cash, the bank then get them reserves back. So the debt has two layers: the deposit debt, the credit debt, and the returning bank reserves that go into their bank reserves. That's why they consider it an asset, because with your repayment, that should, yeah, I won't go into it too much, get deleted, they're getting their reserves back. So it's an asset because reserves is real money. They are assets. But if you can't pay your mortgage, they don't get the reserves back. They might sell your house, get 50 grand. So they get 50 grand of the reserves back, but they're left with £50,000 of reserves that ain't coming back because they haven't got enough of the money back through the house sale. And the only way those reserves come back is through, obviously, the deposits, which they see as an asset because it backs up, connects to the reserves they would get. So then that 50,000 that's still in your deficit, that's still in your mortgage account, for them, instead of being a liability, becomes a non-performing asset, meaning it can't work anymore to draw back those 50,000 reserves. If it's a non-performing asset and a liability, they can simply write it off out of their internal ledgers of assets and liabilities. They can write it off. If it was a liability, they'd have to take money out of their own pocket, should we say. Quite clever. So the banking system as a whole doesn't lose. And when you default on your mortgage, forget securitization for a minute, the chunk that doesn't get returned to the bank, so say you owe 100 grand and the bank sells your house for 50, so they're 50 grand short, because that deposit isn't returning because you've gone bankrupt or you've got no money, the 50,000 of credit is out there, isn't being drawn back into your mortgage now account to be deleted. So that also ends up as 50,000 permanent deposits circulating that can't be deleted. Under my system, which I'm not going to do a video on the whole system now, but there would only be credit. Under my system, you would have a national credit for production, maintaining the infrastructure and utilizing the national resources which belong to the people. That would be the basis of the economy. And that would be controlled to equal production. And like the Guernsey example, when the production is done, you have to draw back out that money to stop inflation or reinvest it. So it would be a credit system, but it's backed by the productivity, what I call positive debt. There's no monetary debt behind it. The productivity is the debt, which I call positive debt. On a personal scale, because you don't want the government controlling all forms of credit, you would have hundreds and hundreds of banks creating credit based on productivity with an upfront service fee, which could be slightly variable depending on the risk they're taking. The upfront service fee comes from the existing monetary supply, therefore debt and money are always equal, therefore we end debt slavery. And the new credit expansion does not need to be backed by bank reserves because it's all credit. It's all based on productive wealth. So that means, because it's not by back reserves, the debt, you have the asset, which is the new deposit, which you go and do production with. The bank now have a liability, which is your liability as well. It's a joint liability. You're contracted to repay that debt based on your future production. You draw and pay off that debt to take it out of circulation, again to avoid inflation. But it's also a debt, a liability to the bank, because it's not going to be backed by reserves. The debt is backed by your productivity, and the bank have to assess the service fee. What risk are they taking? Which means they're going to be very, very careful to make sure all credit is created for productive purposes, not assets, not speculation, only productive purposes. Yeah? So it becomes a liability. So if for some reason you don't pay, they have to be liable to fill that gap because that money has to be drawn out to stop inflation. I don't know anyone who's come up with this new system. And when you add it onto all the other solutions, like armed neutrality, the end of international corporations, not the end of international trading, but the end of international corporations, the utilization of tax only to control inflation. The end of a health service care, but a national free accident and emergency. The end of a benefit system, but local responsibility for people in need, in genuine need. No benefits for people who simply don't want to work. And when you take debt slavery out of that system, everyone can thrive, but we won't be equal. We're not supposed to be equal. Promotion of cooperation instead of competition. Free education in people like sciences or engineers, technologies that will actually benefit the whole nation. It's a full holistic solution, which I put in the first book, but I need to expand more to explain how and why it would work within banking mechanics, which I didn't think I'd need to do. But one, it's a bit of a challenge, which is fun, and two, I think you have to do it. And because my book won't get accepted in, should we say, academic economic circles, because it's not technical enough. So they'll think, oh, but you haven't said this, that, but I understand it. But my book is aimed at the simplicity of the whole system, because my book is based on the real value, which is people, their imagination, the willingness to work, and the resources they have. That is the real value. We don't need a real hard currency, gold, silver, whatever. We don't even need a base currency of real money, because the real wealth is us. This is why I reject gold, because you're transferring the wealth, the value, onto a thing. It's another form of mind control. We are the wealth. The only reason you need a currency is humanity isn't ready to live in the utopia of a free economy, free giving. Everything can be done for free, but we're not there. I'm a realist. I don't believe in the utopia. I also believe that corruption is an actual part of humanity where we are. Hence, I don't believe that government should have the only access to credit. It should be massively spread out through local banks. Full transparency, full education. My book's really about the educational stage, and the second book will be about the educational stage, more to be accepted by educated economists, shall we say. And then transparency, and you have to be able to hold people to account. It's never going to be perfect simply because of human behavior. But we're coming to definitely a crossroads point now, where their solution is to take away access of real money, or what they state is real money, which is cash, because we can't touch bank reserves. They're beyond that. That's a system beyond the individual. It's credit that makes the economy go around for us. But we do have access to real money via cash. That access will be gone under a digitized system. And as we know, it will be a digitized control system. And again, we're then dependent on a corrupt system for our currency. But again, we've been sold the lie that there's wealth in the currency. There's no wealth in the currency. All we need it for is a token of storage, a storage of energies, storage of production that we can pass around or store for productive purposes. That is it. Hence, it doesn't matter what it's made out of, if it's digitized, if it's paper, if it's hemp paper, gold, so it doesn't matter. It's just a token of real, that's given a value, £2 or whatever, but the real wealth is always the people, their imagination, their willingness to work and produce with the resources that they have. And that's the absolute thing I repeat and repeat in my work. Money can be anything given a value. Money is anything. What we're dealing with is a system of currency. What they claim is real currency, and then credit, which is temporary currency. I'm saying it can all be produced with the knowledge and basis that the real wealth is the people, the resources, their imagination, and the willingness to work. And if people understand that, will never become debt slaves to money. or should be very specific, which I am going to be specific in the new book, to currency. I will end it, because we'll always know where the real wealth lies, and you don't need currency to do it. It's just a token. It's all it ever needs to be. Everything else above that is an illusion. Hence, gold is utter nonsense. Bitcoin, as I've said before, is bollocks. It doesn't even exist. So, assets and liabilities. That's why I said a loan to the bank is a liability. In my eyes, yeah, it is, and it should be a liability. In their system, it's an asset because the reserves follow. But it's a two-layered system of reserves and deposits. The reserves are their asset, but they're not willing to be liable for the unpaid credit. For me, you get rid of the reserve bit and you make them liable then the repayment of the credit. And that means that we're going to be very careful to lend money only for productive purposes. Then we're going to have a thriving economy, because you yourself, who takes that loan, will be liable as well. So you're not going to get free money and get away with it. And the banks aren't going to give out free money and get away with it. Complete liability for everyone. Okay.